How you going, everybody? Welcome into the NFL Brekkie Show Draft Wrap Edition. I'm Phil Murphy alongside Laurie, Horesh, two pals separated by 16,000 kilometers or so. But Laz, we've been chatting with great frequency over the past few days, live during days 1, 2, and 3 of the draft, digesting all of the notes, all of the preparation. And now it's time as rookie mini camps are going to be going on, and we'll get further into the northern summer, and we're 19 weeks away today from Monday Night Football in week 1, and it's an 18-week season. So, we're right now we're right about halfway, or week 1 is halfway between now and the wild card round of the playoffs, if you want to be technical about it. So what a good time is any to see how are these teams situated, suited, coming out of the draft, who improved, who didn't. And we start things off with who got hot. And we want to also throw out there, if anybody has any questions about the draft, Laz and I only have about 40 minutes to do this show. We put a lot more time into this and in this prep. So if you do have any questions about particular teams or picks, you want our take, whatever it's worth to you, feel free to fire it away in whatever social channel you are watching, as long as you're live. If you're watching this on delay, you're going to have to wait for us to check our Twitter feeds. But Laz, how you going, man?
I'm good. I feel like you have this release of knowledge or attempted knowledge, study for sure. Certainly the amount of content you've taken in over the last couple of months since the NFL season proper and the regular season. Playoffs came to a conclusion. You go into full draft mode if you weren't, dabbling in it before. A lot of people, when their team's season comes to an end, particularly if they don't make the playoffs, they dive right into draft mode. Some teams, even before the regular season is over, they start turning their eyes towards what could come in late April. And you go through all of that. It's so enjoyable. It's dense. It's fun. You lose yourself in the world of the draft. And then you have this 3 days where it all just it explodes in terms of the talent that is now launched and injected into the NFL. And I think you sit here after a bit, you recap, you kind of go back. Day 1 seems like a blur. Day 2, you have some fond memories of, and day 3 is just this, a total avalanche of names and teams and undrafted free agency. The market opens up there and it's wild. And I think as that quietens down, perhaps it's 11 o'clock at night and you find yourself at a driving range on a Sunday evening because you still got too much adrenaline coursing through your veins that you need to get out of the house and swing away some of that. And you're going through teams and recapping what they did. And that's what's fun. You look at these draft classes as a whole. And I think we go from that point now where it's, 72 hours of social media and group chats, people saying reach, steal, throwing in, is that value? Now all of a sudden that doesn't matter. Yes, draft pedigree matters as you enter the NFL, but for fans, for observers, for media, you look on and it's now about the class. It's the class as a whole. How does it all fit together? I'll get into this a little bit, but did you think a running back in the top 10 was a great use of value? How does that change when you see perhaps an offensive lineman that is paired with that running back in a draft class? So we'll touch on a little bit of that as we get into team specifics. But the dust settles, the draft settles, and now we're left with, what makes the draft so much fun is that hope springs eternal for just about every team.
Yeah, and again, we do want to solicit questions and thoughts. And Laz, you and I have a couple. We do want to explain You Got Hot for anybody who has not been with us before. And it is just, you step away for summer holidays, or for us, the northern summer goes 3 months between school. And, you see somebody who you might have seen the year prior, and they had an upgrade in the proverbial off season. So this is, who got hot amongst these NFL teams. You and I have a couple choices, but somebody that made my list, actually, we have a regular here on ESPN Australia who wants to know our thoughts on the Panthers draft. Brad Bolt, thoughts on the Panthers draft. What was your least favorite pick of the first round? And if it was Detroit's besides them, that's not fair because Detroit's was my least favorite pick of the first round. But Laz, I'll give you the floor first because I originally, when we did this Who Got Hot, Carolina made my list.
Well, I think when you're looking at the Carolina Panthers, so much of this is going to be defined right at the top. When you make that big move up to number 1 and you take a Bryce Young overall, I thought he was the best quarterback in the draft. No issue with the pick there. But then you need to look beyond that. You need to look that dominates so much of the headlines. It is draft capital spent, all that kind of stuff. But if we're looking beyond, we knew there were some veteran receivers in place. They brought in Adam Thielen, DJ Chark, Terrace Marshall. You can see how that was starting to piece together. You can see how the roles, slot roles, a couple of outside talents, then going and getting a Jonathan Mingo to just add more to that plate for young Mr. Bryce Young, who is in a draft class full of guys that were 5'8", 5'9". This is more of your prototypical north of 6 foot, 220 pounds. Really, he timed probably a bit better than he shows on field. He ran a blazing fast 40. Doesn't always show that on the field, but certainly a physical talent. Can make some really tough catches. There's one-handed catches. There's incredible contested situations there. I think the route tree, you'll hopefully see that develop just a little bit more. You did see a little of that classic big body routes being called for him. You saw a lot of those in-breakers, those big digs, where he can, use his frame to protect out there. But that right off the top, and I know this is a class that you had high on your list, so I'm going to let you pick up from where I left off from there. But right off the top there, you can see a plan coming into place for a Carolina Panthers team that has made some massive moves on the coaching staff and is as big a change and as big a new page being turned for a franchise and a roster as we've seen across the NFL. But those two off the top, you can see you're trying to set someone up for success behind an offensive line already in place that is so strong and has been such a much improved unit over the last couple of seasons. How do you like it kicking on from the rest?
Well, I think the next guy that comes up is DJ Johnson, the weak side linebacker out of Oregon. And I think when you watch him on tape, you see a little bit of Brian Burns in his game. So you're talking the perfect backup and understudy to a Brian Burns, a guy who on any given Sunday can play at a Pro Bowl level. And what impressed me about the class is they only had 6 picks going in, only ultimately, I believe, made 5 selections. They consolidated those, but all those were in the top 145. Yeah, the 2 picks they had in the top 39 addressed the biggest need. Quarterback, Bryce Young was my best quarterback in the class. Jonathan Mingo, I think, is in that A.J. Brown mold and is going to offer some depth. Some youth to a team that went out and got an Adam Thielen and a DJ Chark in the offseason. They added Miles Sanders as a running back. But then their only other picks were on day 3, and they got depth where they'd want depth. They got Jamie Robinson at safety. They got offensive guard depth. And amongst undrafted free agents, for me, the best one who was out there was Rajon Wright out of Oregon State, the 6'2" cornerback, and they got him. And they did have a smaller need at corner. So for a team that went 7-10 last year, they get a significant upgrade at quarterback. They get some veterans and especially pass catchers. They get veteran safety in Von Bell. They add to the defensive line. In a weak NFC South, it wouldn't surprise me if this team goes +3 in the win column, which seems modest. But but 7-10 to 10-7, that would be my tip to win the division. I think 10 wins is going to win the NFC South this season. So if I'm supporting the Panthers like our good pal Brad Bolt, I'm celebrating today, man. It's gonna be a different thing, and see how the rookie quarterback starts in week 1. It's not a given that a rookie would take a team to the playoffs in year 1, but for a team in Carolina that hasn't been to the postseason, there is an avenue to a division title, as much because of the lack of high caliber quarterback elsewhere, especially Atlanta and Tampa Bay. But they did all that they could in free agency and in the draft to put themselves in the best position to upgrade by 2 to 4 wins.
I think as much as the NFC South was varied in so many different ways, with the changeover of quarterback we've seen the last couple of years, and people saying it was the Panthers to lose, and which other team. I thought there was some nice drafting across the board, especially from some resource-strapped teams. Chandler Zavala out of NC State was a lot of people's favorite, like a real kind of pet target there, maybe late on day 2 going into day 3 at the guard spot. There's certainly more offensive line thirsty and needy teams in the NFL than the Panthers, but that's good drafting. Importance of having a stable front in front of that young quarterback. The early QB DB is very pleased with what we're seeing. At least the Australian chapter of that committee is very pleased with what we're seeing from the Panthers so far. And yeah, you mentioned Jamie Robinson out of Florida State. I heard some pundits throwing around that this was kind of like a day 3 version of Brian Branch, right? Slightly undersized, not with the blazing speed, but that versatility as a smart piece that you can move around, a bit of a chess piece in the secondary. So Brad, we always appreciate your phenomenal questions. It's certainly a friend of the show. We have one more in here as we get into some teams. All right, we've already taken one of your ones off the top, and we're just going to keep that rolling because John Roberts, the Seahawks.
Oh, yeah.
He's got his fire emoji. He's got his flame emoji out there. The fastest rebuild in recent memory. I know the Seahawks class, Phil, was one of yours that you felt really got hot.
Yeah, I mean, you look at it's hard to hate their day one. They got lockdown corner in Devin Witherspoon at 5 overall, and he's somebody who allowed 3.3 yards per attempt last season. Listen, the only thing that's keeping him from Sauce Gardner is a little bit of length. I mean, he is a feisty cornerback. He's going to complement Tariq Woolen very nicely. Something Tariq Woolen, who has traits you just can't replicate. And they got him as a steal last year as a project DB out of UTSA, and who was magnificent as a rookie. So they get help there. Jackson Smith and Jigba, you can make a case he was the best receiver in the draft. They get him 20th overall.
And what
a slot terror who's going to complement DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett very nicely. And then even, Zach Charbonnet, I get ready for the white wine puns on NFL Blitz this season. Just brace yourself, Australia. They are coming with the Charbonnet smooth, buttery finishes that he has in finding the end zone with his leg strength. But what a nice spell to Kenneth Walker III. And then even still, day 3, what are you going to do? Well, you're just going to round out a brilliant draft by focusing on interior offensive line and D-line play. Just bolstering any area that you could say, oh, they had a little bit of a need on offense or defense, particularly interior offensive line and wide receiver. They improved at every level there. I love the center they got out of Michigan, Olu Oluwatimi, in the 5th round, no less. Kenny McIntosh, did we need another running back there in the 7th round? You can't really fault any position you take there, especially when they've addressed every other need that you could say that they had. And even you look at the linebackers addressed in free agency and Bobby Wagner, getting him back in a Seahawks shirt, Devin Bush, Draymond Jones from my Broncos, they get an edge rusher there. Julian Love, they get the safety out of the Giants, which I think is an upgrade on outbound safety, Ryan Neal. Check. Seattle Seahawks, 9-8 last year. That division, it's going to be tough to catch San Francisco at the top, but San Francisco didn't have a great draft. We'll get to them in a little bit. If Geno Smith can just take that, one more incremental step up, he's the guy. He's got the keys to the car. Again, you're looking at a 10-7 or 11-16 because of all that they did getting young talent in there at positions of need.
Look, Zach Charbonnet is not going to be a fan for those Kenny Walker III dynasty fantasy drafters who were
touchdown vulture, man.
But you who are looking forward to the sophomore
Zach
season.
Charbonnet is going to take 5 or 6 of Kenneth Walker's touchdowns inside the 10.
Look, we talked about him going into this. Zach Charbonnet for me is like a Darren McFadden light, the way he runs. He's got those hulking shoulders, power, some good build-up speed. Not an absolute burner, but plenty of athleticism. Probably not as fast as a young Darren McFadden, but he's got that same sharp shuffling footwork. He's not going to pull off amazing Tajay Spears types of moves. How many people have been caught between Tajay Sharp and Tajay Spears this draft season? But he's not going to pull off those kind of really fluid moves, but he's got that kind of set you up, shuffle footwork, and then bang, plant, and just leave you guessing type of different type of agility, almost a more physical, explosive side-to-side agility than the more fluid, highlight reel spins that we might see from other backs. But just put, the concerns of Kenneth Walker and fantasy drafters aside for a sec. Look at the skill talent that you've put around Geno Smith. You want to see if he can do it again. You want to see if he can back it up. If we're seeing this is the new era, the true new version of Geno Smith is here to stay. You've got Jackson Smith and Jigba joining, a perfect fit with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, finally getting, some real upside at that third receiver option. He could ascend beyond that. You've got 2 running backs there that you feel really good about with Walker and Charbonnet. You've got an offensive line that was already massively invested and take a huge step forward. And you mentioned the offensive line investment. Anthony Bradford out of LSU, some of the most fun offensive line tape that you'll see in this draft season. Why? Because he's looking to finish nasty. He is an absolute protector in terms of the mentality, physicality that he brings to the spot. So that's a lot of fun. Certainly fits the kind of frosty, frigid, the NFC West battles between the Seahawks and the 49ers, those type of battles that we imagine from yesteryear when the temperature drops.
And I will say, anybody who has a question about Jackson Smith and Jigba, I know 83% of his college snaps are from the slot. I can't remember who it was that put in the question with the fire emoji. just go watch the Rose Bowl from 2 years ago when, with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, NFL players now into their second year, Jackson Smith-Njigba had 15 catches, and this is in one game, 15 catches, 347 yards, and 3 touchdowns in a Rose Bowl. I mean, against a quality opponent. He's a guy who had 112 targets and 95 receptions. That's like an 88% catch rate over the course of the 2021 season. He is magnificent out of the slot. And for somebody like Geno Smith, who's going to, take what's given to him for the interior targets, he's a guy who could step right into the NFL and get 75 catches. So I think Seattle fans, if you have any interest in getting excited about Jackson Smith-Njigba, and why wouldn't you, go find tape of the 2021. I guess technically it was a 2022 Rose Bowl because it was from January of 2022.
All right, a couple of awesome questions off the top there. Keep them coming in. You want us to know about a pick you liked, a pick you didn't like, how your team did. You got scathing criticisms or critiques and not perhaps commentary about the shirt that I wore on our post-day one show, which I think received more positives than negatives. There's been a couple of fashion items of late, both on air and in the office, that have drawn some interesting commentary. I think largely positive from viewers and surrounding friends and family. But hey, that's just what we're here to do on the NFL Brekkie Show. All right. We're down under 25 minutes to go. So we're going to keep this thing moving. Right off the top for me, who got hot? A team that I don't think anybody would have looked at their offense last year or watched too many of their games and gone, oh, that was a highly spicy encounter. I'm glad I spent 3 hours and change dialed into the Pittsburgh Steelers playing football. But I got the Steelers as a team that got hot. On that fringe, another season where they avoid, a losing record with Mike Tomlin there. But Tomlin having, and that, again, this is another franchise that we've seen a changeover in front office in recent years. I love what the Steelers did right off the top. Offensive line was an absolute need. You go get Broderick Jones in the first round. You come back at the top of day 2. Worst kept secret. You go to Phil Murphy's Twitter feed. You'll see he was putting it out there. It was all build up. Joey Porter Jr. going to the Steelers where his father played football, where his father earned Lombardis. So we get Joey Porter Jr. again filling a massive need at cornerback there. As we said, they brought in the likes of Patrick Peterson, but this is a physical, tough, very straight line athletic, good speed. There's some questions. I think some of the concerns about how he kind of flips and how fluid he is making turns downfield. This guy wants to win and play the game like a Marlon Humphrey type, and he just so happens to land in the same division as Marlon Humphrey. They come back. Again, in the second round, Keanu Benton. This is an interior, not a great interior defensive line class, but this is a guy, Benton, that I thought had massive amounts of upside. Spent a lot of the time, with run stuffing duties in college, but you definitely saw some pass rushing upside, the athletic upside, and then he goes somewhere like the Senior Bowl, and in a lot of the pass rushing opportunities, I think he impressed a lot of people there. Again, another spot with some of the names that they've seen exit that defensive line that was so formidable. A family affair continues. I mean, I'm not going to go through all their draft picks, but they go get Nick Herbig, nice value in the 4th. His brother Nate already on the Steelers there. So you get it adding to that defensive front again with Herbig. And then a guy who was an absolute favorite of mine, Corey Trice, who a very talented 6'3" corner out of Purdue, has great mobility, ran in the 4.4s. Really nice ball instincts. You see him peel off. You see him always around the ball making disruptive plays. I think he's got the great footwork and fluidity for the position. I thought he could be this year's kind of Tariq Woolen. I think a few people tabbed him as that. He slides down to the 7th round. Some concern. It sounds like it's always, you see a name drop and you wonder what's going on there. And someone like Corey Trice, it's his knee that he came back from injury. There were some related injuries after the knee. He was wearing a brace, but it certainly didn't affect his play. 7th round, awesome value. And I've got to mention Darnell Washington as well. Might be not quite the sum of his amazing, immense athletic parts just yet at the tight end spot, but he will be a red zone presence. He has phenomenal athleticism. He has a physicality for blocking. You can refine that even more. It's just a lot to like about what the Steelers did. I just rattled through it and didn't breathe much, but a lot to like from that Steelers draft.
Well, I mean, it succinctly, it was a clean, mature days 1 and 2. They get Georgia teammates at tackle and Broderick Jones and inline tight end and Darnell Washington. So guys who spent the last couple seasons playing next to each other.
Sorry, we've spent how much noise has there been about the Philadelphia Eagles bringing Georgia guys in? It's just the state of Pennsylvania at this point.
Right. It's just the pipeline. I've been looking for direct flights from Philly to Athens. It keeps trying to send me to Greece. But for the Steelers, I was clamoring. Joey Porter Jr. just made sense at every level. And I mean, he had to have known as soon as day 1 ended, They pick up the phone. Hey, buddy, we're taking you first pick overall in the second round. Pack your bags, drive south. You don't even need to fly. And they had a long gap in day 3, but then they hit on the need with Nick Herbig. And Laz, I'm going to point out some undrafted free agents for them. Jordan Byrd, the running back out of San Diego State, I think is an interesting running back 3. And they got Monty Pittenbaum, Monty the Mullet, the fullback out of Iowa. He's going to play an H-back role for them. One of the better nicknames from the draft, maybe stepping into that Derek Watt role. This is for a team in the offseason that added veterans and Patrick Peterson and Allen Robinson. Strides forward under Matt Canada in his 3rd season, and more importantly, Kenny Pickett in his 2nd season, giving this team every opportunity as the AFC North continues just to be a buzzsaw. Pittsburgh did all that they could in this draft to keep pace.
All right. I think we've waxed lyrical about a couple of teams there. We've still got a few more. I think we're going to do a few of these each. We're down at about the 20-minute mark to go. I'm keeping my eye on the clock very cleanly here. This is from watching the seconds tick down when the Dallas Cowboys were picking in that first round, wondering what was going on. Who's next for you? Who grabbed your attention?
Well, I'm going to go with the team where I did see a tweet asking about this, and we got the tinfoil caps it now, and I don't necessarily fault it because I'm in that camp sometimes as well. Tom Otten, one of the better QB prospects of the draft, Tanner McKee, fell because of his size and lack of athleticism. Head scratcher going to the Eagles. I don't think it's a head scratcher at all. They paid Jalen Hurts. They want as good as possible as a QB2 behind him. Right now, it's Marcus Mariota. Fine. But if Tanner McKee is that value, then you either have a sturdy backup or somebody that was in the Matt Schaub role of yesteryear that is a trade piece that is available in the future. But that's not the headline of Philly's draft class. I just wanted to address Tom's thoughts there. That Athens pipeline, man, just keeps getting stronger. We were laughing about it. Like, are they going to draft Uga the fourth, the Georgia mascot? No, but they're going to trade for DeAndre Swift, because why wouldn't they? And that kind of put some rationale between the Lions going yet another running back as high as they did, given what they had in their backfield, knowing that Swift was likely on the way out. But Athens pipeline gets stronger on day 1 with Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. Again, just putting Jalen Carter around mature voices. Not to beat that over the head, but that's the only knock that was against this kid was the post-draft process, and it was significant. He was charged with crimes. He showed up overweight and out of shape to the combine. It's not like he got overweight in the summer when he got his first paycheck, but you put him on a defensive line with Fletcher Cox, a veteran, and somebody who was a leader in that locker room, and Jordan Davis. And then on day 2, after the dust has settled from Philly, the pipeline continues. They go with needs with Tyler Steen at tackle and Sidney Brown at safety. They definitely had needs at safety. This team had 9 players have 700 or more defensive snaps last season. 5 of them are now on other teams. So as formidable as that run game is, they had a lot of questions to answer with year over year bringing back some defensive pieces. And they went to the draft to do it. They have Terrell Edmonds in there. And then, you say, okay, well, Georgia, they still kind of need some safety depth. So what do they do, Laws, in the 4th round? They take a cornerback who's the size of a safety, and he's from Georgia, in Keely Ringo. 70 sacks last season for the Eagles, was far and away number 1 in the NFL. Try and keep that going with Nolan Smith, and they're going to try and keep it going with Moro Ajomo, even though he's more of a run-stopping defensive end. He has teach tape against the run. A kid out of Texas, they got him late in the 7th round, which for me was excellent value for him. I wouldn't have been surprised if he went late round 4 to late round 5. So to get him at 7, if I'm the Eagles, I'm thinking they're positioned quite well to be the first back-to-back NFC East champions in 19 seasons since 2004.
I think there's so much obvious athletic talent that jumps off the board what the Eagles did. Yes, day 1 grabbed headlines. Day 2, Sidney Brown, I think he tests better, particularly the kind of his 40 speed than perhaps he showed up in coverage. But I think there's a physical presence there. Yeah, I just mentioned you're talking about football character that you're adding on that day 2. You're tapping into an Illinois team that had so many Illinois defense, an Illinois team that had a phenomenal amount of draft picks, particularly in that secondary. I think you come back with some of the value they found on day 3. I wasn't the biggest Keely Ringo guy from a tape standpoint. The traits are obviously very impressive. But I think the league probably tells you there that him slipping to the top of day 3, that they probably see him more as an athlete than football player at this point, but there's so much to work with there. And they don't need to rush him into a role there in Philadelphia. So look, the Eagles sent a lot of shockwaves, not shockwaves, just a lot of, just a reminder through the rest of the NFC and the NFL. And I think the NFC East particularly would have felt that. And their rivals. Interesting to hear some of the murmurs coming out over draft weekend that there's NFL general managers that are apparently not too happy with all the love that Howie Roseman gets, that it's getting a little out of hand. But I mean, look at the roster. It's hard to argue at this point. All right. The questions are coming in. Please keep them firing. Let us know about your team and what you're seeing, what you want, and what you took away from the weekend. Next one for me, I'm going to go to Indianapolis. I'm an Anthony Richardson believer there. I think he's young. He's only got, he's got the one season of experience and starting tape at college, and people are going to bring up the likes of Mitchell Trubisky off the bat and get panicked there. But there was a lot of responsibility put on him. He is so early in his development. We know the physical and the athletic tools. Throwing, where he can put the ball is absolutely superb across the entire field there. I think you're going to see with the coaching staff that they have in place there, with Steichen coming in, we're going to see something that's curated and designed for him. Looking beyond just Anthony Richardson, I'm not going to go through the entire draft. I know you were higher on Julius Brents, the corner, than I was, but they come back in the 5th round and they get a Darius Rush. You're seeing the length, the athletic traits that you're getting in the cornerback spot. That's something that we know that they like in Indianapolis. Josh Downs, yes, he's small. He's that slot-only type of player, but this man has a massive amounts of explosion in his game, great gear control, good safe hands, and how he balances with Pierce and Pittman that you already have the big, tall, outside winning types. They're the guys that you can line up out there. You have that physical profile. This makes so much sense in terms of how you're structuring those offensive weapons for Richardson when he does take over, whether that's week 1 or some point of his rookie season. And yes, there's some offensive line concerns there. Jake Witt late was a very sexy sleeper that they get in the 7th round. And, Adetomi Adebaware, I mean, this is more, the hype had got up to his appearing late in first-round mocks, but getting him down there in the 4th round, a projected move inside to 3 technique, outrageous length, outrageous athletic testing, historic athletic testing for what he put down. There's a very clear philosophy and cohesion to what the Colts did here. I think some of the shine had come off of Chris Ballard as a GM with just the struggles that they've had at the quarterback position. But I loved what the Colts did. I know you weren't just as high on them, but I think there's so much obvious talent that at positions of need. And I think they are taking big steps to having a very cohesive piece around that quarterback in potential, that quarterback incoming, which they just have not put in place since what they've been recovering since the Andrew Luck early retirement.
Yeah, Laz, it's you and I were talking. It's a lot of shades of gray in this draft. Very few that we thought were teams really had very, picture perfect, ideal drafts, just because they're, you're kind of slotted into need, and sometimes there's a run on players right before you pick. And very few teams really whiffed in this draft because there were a lot of positions of depth. And what I like about what Steichen's doing, Shane Steichen, in his first year, he's got a plan. He's building Philly Midwest with Anthony Richardson, obviously Jonathan Taylor. They get Evan Hall out of Northwestern in the 5th round. Man, I love Josh Downs. His production was through the roof. There's some speed questions, ran 4.48 at the combine, but his footwork, his route running makes up for that 0.08 of a second that you would like to see shaved off of that 40 time for somebody with his height and his build. I think he's going to have a lot of success in the slot if he can get the timing down with an Anthony Richardson, which is just part of Richardson's maturation. And the requisite questions about him is, can he be functionally accurate in the NFL? Full stop. If he can, his measurables and the things you can't teach, without question, his arm strength, all of it.
I think you're just looking for more consistency, particularly in the lower body stuff, right? Look, we're not going to go deep dive into exactly where he places his footwork. If you want to see footwork drills, go look up Dak Prescott and the Dak dance before games that went viral so many times. There's moments where the footwork is really nice. There's moments where he doesn't panic in the pocket. His pocket poise is really good. People go, oh, he's just a runner. He's a dual threat. No, he's a dual threat, but he wants to stay in the pocket. He doesn't break out of clean pockets unnecessarily just to use his legs. He wants to win from there. But he just has obviously immense physical capability. Yeah, you could just settle down in the pocket a little bit. You certainly see the bounding athleticism when he's rocking back there, but it's not that his mechanics are broken, and it's not that his arm throwing mechanics are broken. The arm throwing, the arm motion is beautiful. The release is amazing. The ball leaps out. It's just that it's not consistent. He needs seasoning. He is so young. And I think that's an important thing when people go, oh, he's just not accurate. have a look. There's plenty of accurate throws there. There's also an offense that was very downfield heavy, so that's going to knock a couple of percentage points off. It's not everything. You do see him miss some of those. You do see him miss some short throws, some of those dump offs, some of those quick hitters. And I think that's just down to just getting more consistent down low. Thankfully, he's got time and design, coaching staff that is willing to give him time to season and design around him.
I like how Laz is like, I'm not going to break down Anthony Richardson, and here we are. I'll close out my thoughts on the Colts class. Like Josh Downs, I think Anthony Richardson, it's a good fit for him. And I said this on our post day one show. I've said it since I think Mina Kimes put it better than anybody in that, yeah, complex defenses may give Anthony Richardson problems, but what he brings to the table forces opponents to simplify their defense and play assignment football, because if they don't, his size and his 40 time and his ability to run and throw on the run will eat you alive. You mentioned Adetomiwa Adebawore, the combine star who ran, a 4.48, I want to say, at 282 pounds. Concerns maybe he's too short to be an edge. Laz, this guy was a high school state champion in shot put, and if you think about the muscular makeup, we talked about this with who is the Eagles? Cam Jurgens. He was a discus thrower, and how that has helped his core strength to be a terrific center. I mean, just think of the muscles you need to be a high-level shot putter, and how well that translates with an outside punch to get around a pass rusher in the NFL. The reason I didn't have the Colts top my list, the two offensive linemen they picked, Blake Freeland and Jake Witt, with significant needs on the interior. Both of those guys are tackles without the build, to me, to kick inside. But the Colts have $23 million of cap space left to spend. Go get a Dalton Risner, who's out there at offensive guard. Go get some edge rushing depth.
Is Isaiah Wynn still out there, I think, as a free agent?
Isaiah Wynn is still out there. Donovan Smith is still out there amongst tackles. But amongst edge rushers that can improve their edge rush with the Leonard Floyd or Melvin Ingram, or if they want to be the latest stop on the Jadeveon Clowney NFL World Tour, God bless you. Who else is there amongst edge rushers? Oh, Yannick Ngakoue. I mean, I don't know if he's going back there, but you know what I mean? Like there are edge rushers available to Indianapolis to continue to bolster those positions of need. And even, again, if you're not super high on Julius Brents to start day one, you can go to Marcus Peters. You have $23 million to spend. That can get you three of the guys I mentioned. And it's significant because the AFC South after Jacksonville is a wasteland. It is a wide open race to be the second best team in the AFC South, get a lot of winnable games, and chomp your way to nine wins or so. And now you're in the back end of a wild card race, just because you're going to get some freebies potentially against a Titans team that's cratering, and a Texans team that is a slow build that I think may be formidable in 2 years or so. But I don't think next year is the year that they're really in consideration.
All right, we've got about 10 minutes. Maybe I can get it to 12 minutes before we got to get out of here. We're moving. Of course, we get bogged down in the Indianapolis Colts. Who couldn't predict that? We do have one question there that I'm going to save to close. It's a nice closer. It's which rookie receiver or tight end will get the most yards this season. Put that in the back of your mind so you got something cooking and brewing back there. Nice, slow cooked, almost like a 12-hour lamb back there. We'll call it a 12-minute lamb that you're working on there, 12-minute take. That is slow roasting in the back of the immensely gifted Phil Murphy mind. All right, which other team, which other draft class, who else got hot, who came back, whether they got more cultured, maybe they're rocking some new books, fashion, glasses, maybe hit the gym, got a tan, who knows? Maybe they're just more confident in themselves and it's glowing outwards. Personality shines through. Who got hot? Who's the next one for you, Phil?
Laz, I hate this because this is always a team that loved to shoot itself in the foot in the AFC West. They had what I thought was a pretty cohesive class in the LA Chargers. You look coming in, LA didn't wow you necessarily with draft capital. They had 7 picks toward the back end of the round. They didn't really have any significant trades. They had a quiet offseason. They got Eric Hendricks. They lost Drew Tranquil Fine. They had needs at receiver, interior defensive line, edge rusher. They addressed all those. And I want to draw attention to Tuli Tuipulotu. He's a 5 technique that could be a nice appetizer to Joey Bosa or a Khalil Mack pass rush. He's a 6'3", 266-pound player out of USC. And the crazy thing is this guy had 13 sacks last year, and he had a lot of moments on tape where he almost pulled up and left some tackles on the field where he wasn't out of the play because of his athleticism, but he kind of, I don't want to say he gave up on the play because it's not a motor thing. I just think he kind of had like a safe contain when he didn't need to. But man, if they go back and watch, it's like, hey man, finish this. You've done all the hard yards, get it done. He could be even more productive. And he fits at either, like I said, a 5 technique to kind of protect the pass rush of a Bosa or Khalil Mack, or he can run a 3 tech and a 4-3. They had a lot of front 7 needs. They addressed darn near all of them. And again, they can go on the free agent market as well and get another edge rusher if they're keen. Get maybe a true outside linebacker type to back up a Bosa or a Mack. But then in the first round, I'd be remiss if I didn't draw attention to Quentin Johnson, who's a true vertical threat, as they bring in somebody with whom you're very well familiar, offensive coordinator Kellen Moore, fresh over from the Cowboys, giving him and Justin Herbert just a nice 9-route jump ball, throw it up into space with that catch radius and that leaping ability whenever you want it. Plus, they get a versatile kick returner in Darius Davis, who's going to be a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 for them. I think it just overall, it's a class that Chargers fans can be excited for a team that has found a way to be its own worst enemy in Week 17. I think this is a team that made the requisite improvements in this draft to have a little bit of margin should they throw a game away at the end of December or early January. Or, in the case of the playoffs, blowing a 27-point lead to the Chargers.
On the Quentin Johnston pick, I think a lot of people probably expected him to see that 40-yard time to be 4.4 something, not 4.5 even, and it was at a pro day. So you got, it was a 4.47, it was a 4.52. It came in around the 4.5 even mark. That would have assuaged the clamoring noise around getting some speed in that wide receiver core that you and me have been a part of for some time. But there's certainly bounding athleticism. There's certainly you see the explosive jumps there from Quentin Johnson. He's not a finished product, but if we're talking about where he lands, there's obviously not a lot of pressure on him to deliver straight away in the Chargers building. But man, this guy needs some nuance, and you need to sharpen up at what the tools he brings, some consistency with the hands, consistency with the route running, some details and stuff. Tell you what, you can learn that off of Keenan Allen. He should be in there day one, just copying what old number 13 is rocking there in that Chargers, in this gorgeous. I always love the Chargers color scheme. Okay, for me, knowing that time is pressing, the Atlanta Falcons, I think they massively punched above their weight class with the quality of the quality of the roster that they had, or the lack of quality they had on the roster last year. Just a couple of to grab a few. Obviously, Saquon Barkley gets the attention off the top. Number 8, do they have the offensive line to properly capitalize on his talents as immense as they are across all 3 downs? That's a question mark. They come back and get my guy Bergeron there in the second round. Talented offensive tackle, stays in front of his man. Lovely, clean operator, like his footwork. Matthew Bergeron out of Syracuse, Zach Harrison in the 3rd. And then you want to get an alpha to throw back there in the secondary. Alpha attitude, not alpha size with Clark Phillips the 3rd, but alpha attitude. You've already got AJ Terrell back there in the Falcons camp there, in the Falcons roster. Clark Phillips the 3rd. If you don't know this guy, the fight, the smarts, the anticipation, the ability to cause havoc against receivers. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the longest guy. He ran about a 4.5 40. But as a football player, a cornerback, this guy competes. His football character is absolutely off the chain. You go watch the plays he makes in college, and then look at the surrounding crowd that is just flocking to his form there, and just drinking in the experience that is a Clark Phillips III. Love that value on day 3. I've got alpha in big capital letters there. So the Falcons jumped out to me, and I'm going to sneak one more in there because we are getting close on time here. The Bears. Obviously, had the draft capital with the move back. They get Darnell, plot him down there. Another offensive lineman I liked. Slap him on the edge of that right side of the line and lock that thing down. You get some starch in the middle of the defensive line, which they need with Gervin Dexter, Zach Pickens. Gervin Dexter has all the athletic talent you want coming out of Florida. I don't know whether it was scheme, or I don't know whether you kind of need to just, light a firework or light, heat up somewhere in his vicinity to get his feet moving quicker off the snap. But there's a lot of talent there to beef up the middle of that line. Tyreek Stevenson at cornerback, but then the 3 late that I loved on day 3. Roschon Johnson, running back. I know Dallas was keen on him sliding to them. Roschon Johnson, powerful, ran behind Bijan Robinson at Texas. 3-down capability. He is yoked up. He's rocked. He's got nice kind of choppy footwork to make you to make it hard on tacklers. He's got some nice straight line speed, good vision, toughness. Can do work as pass blocker. Tyler Scott, late in the 4th round. You kidding me? This guy should have gone in the 2nd round. Yes, he's small, but speed for days. He elevates. He can climb to the penthouse. I love adding more talent for Justin Fields to work on. The theme of the draft, friends for Justin, friends for Justin, friends for Justin. And then Terrell Smith, nice value, cornerback, late, 5th round. All right, I got 2 done in about
quick reacts to those. I like what Arthur Smith did, just having an identity. Needs be damned. We're going to run the ball. That said, they got no pass catching help for Desmond Ridder. They ended up getting a few guys as undrafted free agents, but out of the likes of Oklahoma Baptist and Henderson State and the University of Buffalo. Not huge on those. But Chicago, man, 31 ranked run defense. They did all that they could to bolster that interior defensive line. And then I like drafting a trio of corners to create some competition, provide depth. And Chicago still has some cash to splash if they want to go out and get somebody on the free agency market. They have the free agency money to spend in the entire NFL.
True on the pass catchers, but what you expect from Arthur Smith, a well-designed offense, you do have Kyle Pitts in-house. You do have Drake London in-house. And you've already heard them talking about what they can do with Bijan breaking him out into the slot there. That's a 3-piece that's nice to work with. Marcus Mariota, the passing statistics. I mean, that was a tough watch, tough to glean too much. I think Smith did a good job coaching year 1. There's plenty to take away from there. Do you have one more? I reckon I can get us another 3 minutes. What do you reckon, Phil?
Sure. I mean, I can go to Tampa Bay. I mean, I thought they had a pretty strong class. It needs that defensive tackle, right tackle, edge rusher on days 1 and 2, kind of went 3 for 3. Mm-hmm. I mean, day 3, I have them kind of in that next tier because they had some needs at, they went wide receiver, tight end, and inside linebacker, none of which I really thought were needs. They could have used another quarterback because right now their QB depth charts is Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask at 1-2. They could have used a safety. They didn't go that way. Trey Palmer's an interesting prospect in the 6th round. If he can fix the drops problem, he was somebody at LSU and Nebraska. You look at his height, 6'2" and change, his 40 times sub 4. Oh, yeah. He's got all the measurables. He just has some focus drops, and you want to get rid of those. But when they bring in Kalijah Kancey, which I know you didn't love him, but it was a thin defensive tackle class. They got one of the better defensive tackles available. They bring Cody Mauch at right tackle where they had Neej and an edge rusher and Yaya Diaby. And Servachier Dennis, I thought if you're going to go outside need at inside linebacker, he had terrific tape at Pitt. He's going to be a guy who steps in and gets 90 tackles. So I thought Tampa did enough, especially on days 1 and 2 with the value picks. And then they got some good football players, kind of what best available after that.
I do really like Yaya Diaby. This guy is moldable. He's long, he's fast, he's athletic, he can bend, there's power, there's shock in his hands. I think he's new to the game. He's not overly seasoned, and you'd be able to bring him up there. I'll make it easier on you in a second. Ask, okay, well, who got held back? Who's a class that you didn't love? But I want to give a quick honorable mention. The Bengals already a contender, so hard to say they got hot. But I think this was let the draft come to you. Classic example of this. You get Miles Murphy sliding to you at 28 in the first round. Classic Bengals rusher. You can see the 4.3 prototype there. Not the bendiest around the edge, but powerful straight line speed, long. DJ Turner, adding to that rejigged, retooled, refueled secondary there. You can see DJ Turner, Cam Taylor-Britt being pillars, the cornerback spot for them. Jordan Battle, they've seen talent leave at the safety spot in the core of that secondary, the spine of that defense. And Jordan Battle comes in and offers a lovely injection of talent there in the 3rd round. Charlie Jones, wide receiver, plenty of fans. And the one that I love the most, with everything that's hanging around, Joe Mixon, and his future being so unclear there, not to mention a drop-off in productivity last year and not his best season by far. Chase Brown out of Illinois, a patient, great vision, sophisticated cutter with burst, with explosion. He bounces off tackles, got great contact balance, and someone that ran, it seemed like almost exclusively out of shotgun at Illinois, going to a team in the Bengals that changed their running game and changing their running attack last year when it was inefficient to start the season and moved to running out of shotgun and greatly improved it. It's an awesome fit, an early one. If you're in the fantasy world, if you're already looking ahead to the 2023 fantasy season, Chase Brown would not surprise me if he's taking a major, major role in that Cincinnati Bengals backfield as it's ticking towards 10 p.m. Phil, who got held back? Who didn't come back from summer looking hot? Who came back from summer in the same year they were in last year?
Last first thing, I'm disappointed we didn't bring up Andre Iosivas out of Princeton, the Bengals pick. The head tackle ran a 4.43. I loved. I was higher than him, I think, than anybody. Who got held back? San Francisco. They didn't have a ton of draft capital. In fact, they had very little. They didn't pick till 87 overall. And if you're ranking, using the draft capital calculator that puts them in the bottom 5 of the league overall, but they had like 4 picks out of 5, 99 to 102. They go place kicker at 99 overall in the 3rd round. When you traded for a place kicker and traded down in a day 3 pick to get one in Zane Gonzalez, offensive line needs were completely ignored, both offensive tackle and offensive guard. They had 6 day 3 picks, and they didn't pick a single offensive lineman. They go undersized D end and offensive outside linebacker. They kind of went overkill with tight end depth. They look for wide receiver luxury. They drafted 2 tight ends. Ronnie Bell, not a position in need. EQB DB, thumbs down because they didn't do a darn thing to help that offensive line.
Yeah, just putting that pressure on a kicker, being the highest drafted, first day 2 kicker pick since Roberto Aguayo by the Buccaneers in 2016.
How'd that go? He was out of the league in a year.
Honorable mention, another one I'm going to throw. I like the Giants, what they did for the first 3 rounds. I think a lot of people did. Banks, John Michael Schmitz, and Jalen Hyatt appropriately drafted that spot.
A shadow. He is so fun to watch.
He is. How he fits in an NFL system, we will find, but speed tends to work in the NFL. The Saints, I thought they'd draft age nicely. Wasn't the biggest fan of Foskey. I thought awesome athletic talent, great hustle, great motor. Certainly needs to learn more and become more detailed. They'll get the chance with some of the veterans they have.
an interesting body type and build to get him in the 6th round.
A.T. Perry in the 6th. Hayner is an interesting quarterback there. The Fresno State connection there with Derek Carr. You got 2 Fresno State quarterbacks that have a relationship. Salvieri early on day 3.
Tipping the hand that Alvin Kamara's days might be numbered.
Kendre Miller is a talented running back. Go watch what he did at TCU. Okay, we're almost out of here. I will throw out why the Saints get a nod as well. Oh, because in undrafted free agent, Big Lou Headley, Aussie punter out of the pro kick pipeline, out of the University of Miami. The alarm is going off because it's so hot. We are heating up with the love for Lou Headley that he lands there with the New Orleans Saints. Big Lou. We've got a feature on him on the ESPN Australia YouTube channel. You can go watch it now. The man who stole signing day, the punter who stole signing day back in 2019. And another shout out, I mentioned the Steelers before. Why do they get the nod? Because they're one of 2 reported teams so far to extend a minicamp invite to the greatest punter in college football history. Adam Corsack out of Rutgers. Both the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs and the Pittsburgh Steelers have invited Adam Corsack in for they sent the invites out for their upcoming rookie mini camps. And notably 2 teams that certainly deal with outdoor, adverse, frosty, windy, wet, wild, snowy weather conditions. And if you're up in Rutgers, you've played through that before. Go watch Corsack. It's frosty conditions, no offense is moving the ball, and he's firing those vintage Corsack darts to every little corner of the field. So they get honorable mentions. Phil, let's close this thing out before I get kicked out of the studio. One more. Oh, geez, we've got a couple flying in. If Gibbs wasn't taken at 12, where do you think he would have fallen to? Not too far, probably early 20s, I think. Lions draft age as well. A lot of headlines on day 1. We talked about it. If you just rejig it around, put Brian Branch to 12, put Gibbs to 18, drop Campbell to the 2nd round, push Laporta back a little bit, and you get him. They got the perfectly fine.
The order was a little funky how we got there.
It was, but they got there, and that's what I'm talking about. Now we just look at the pieces. And then this one to close on, which rookie receiver or tight end will get the most yards this year? I know it's Luke Schoonmaker. Why? No, who have you got there, Phil, who's jumping out to you?
Well, the reflective thought, Dave Flowers, because he's instantly going to be a wide receiver 1 in Baltimore, whereas Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jordan Addison are going to be wide receiver 2s to very talented receivers. Somebody to watch, though, Jalen Hyatt at the Giants. I know they're a run-first team. That's their identity. But Jalen Hyatt had more touchdowns in a game last year against Alabama, 5 on 6 receptions for 270 yards against Bama than all the Giants receivers had all of last season. He had crazy production in the SEC, 19 yards per reception. He can run any snap. He's a vertical threat. Overs, crosses, 9 routes. He's got a 4.4 40 and a 40-inch vertical. I think there's some scheme questions about him. I think Brian Daboll is going to know how to use him. They got him in the 3rd round, I believe, 73 overall. Yeah, that would be 3rd round. So I think he's an interesting flyer. If you're keen for like a punt on that, you probably get him somewhere around the $12 or $15 range. I think he's going to, much like Adam Corsack, outkick his coverage in terms of our expectation and his production. Jalen Hyatt is a sleeper to watch there, but my reflexive thought, Zay Flowers. Amongst tight ends, got to be Dalton Kincaid because he's going to play like a wide receiver in Buffalo.
Interesting with Dalton Kincaid. Obviously, the Bills moving up in front of Dallas Cowboys, presumptively to jump them and take the tight end. Word is, and there's some of the audio the Cowboys put out some video about who they were talking about at 26 was Mozzie Smith and Matthew Bergeron. It wasn't Dalton Kincaid. It sounds like for the Cowboys, not unlike the Detroit Lions, the top tight end on their board, Sam Laporta out of Iowa. But I will say, if you're looking for a positive for Dalton Kincaid, the last time a team jumped in front of the Dallas Cowboys to take a tight end they presumed was going and had the first letters D-A-L in their first name, the Eagles, jumping up to grab Dallas got it ahead of the Cowboys, and that has aged very, very nicely for the team from Philadelphia, whilst Connor Williams is on a second team, the eventual pick there by the Dallas Cowboys. I like where you went with Hyatt there. I mean, I think if DJ Moore wasn't in Chicago, I'd say it's going to be Tyler Scott. Cedric Tillman, who landed with the Cleveland Browns on day 2 in the third round as they got in on the action really late. The Cleveland Browns, so much noise around that franchise and deservedly a lot of criticism, especially after not just the off-field side of things with Deshaun Watson, but then on-field as well. I mean, that was not inspired play when he made it onto the paddock in 2022. But Tillman, could he be an addition to the big body Gotti club? I like the value they got there. Flowers.
And he'll push Donovan Peoples-Jones for sure.
Flowers does really jump out. And look, I don't think there's going to be I think Michael Mayer is going to get plenty of opportunity. Might not be yards, but in terms of receptions there in Las Vegas, he's going to present himself a really obvious target there for Jimmy Garoppolo in parts of the field that we know Jimmy Garoppolo likes to work in. So that's what jumps out for me. I haven't been kicked out yet. Let's circle back.
I have a quick follow on my thought with Zay Flowers as well. I think now that the Ravens have invested all guaranteed dollars into Lamar Jackson, it wouldn't surprise me if there was some urging from that front office for fewer designed runs for somebody to whom they've sunk in nearly $200 million guaranteed dollars US. Use his mobility, obviously allow Lamar Jackson to improvise, but some more designed, just the greater propensity of a guy who's proven he can deliver from the pocket. You bring in Odell Beckham, you bring in Rashad Bateman. Let Zay Flowers cook, man. Be your wide receiver one, which is why he was the one who jumped out to me. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best receiver that'll be in this class come 5 years from now. But if we're talking year one production, that's why I'm going Zay Flowers out of Boston College.
You're making a dangerous amount of sense for this time in the evening over where you are, Phil, and this time in the morning where I am. Look, I think that's going to bring us to the end.
I'm wearing my John Clayton shirt. That's why. Rest in power.
Look, I think draft season is so much fun. It's so chock full of analysis, hot takes, energy, and emotion, and just a ridiculous amount of content. But Phil, as always, it's time for you to land this ship and get us on out of here as we sail towards mini camps and off season. But a pleasure as always running through the glory, particularly the final 2 months, but the glorious run that is draft time in the NFL.
Yeah, Laz, I don't think we're doing a rookie mini camp version of the NFL Brekkie Show. Perhaps a pre-season week 0 type thing will be in order if sponsorships, can nudge those in the right direction. But no, thank you for all those who have supported the show, both in backing this year throughout the season, and obviously the viewers and the names we see pop up every week on our feed. This is something that is Laz and I started this because we wanted to talk football, and we were having these conversations offline, and we thought it might be interesting to do so online. Thank you guys for being a part of it. And it sounds like we'll see you 18 to 19 weeks from now for week 1 of the NFL season. But the NFL is the league that never stops. I kept talking free agents. We're going to be up on all those, obviously on ESPN.com throughout the offseason. NFL Live is going to run throughout May and June. So it's a league that never stops. If you are keen to stay involved and stay plugged in, ESPN.com and ESPN TV is the place. I just saw a little cheers, good stuff. Thank you guys for the questions, as always. For Laurie Horesh, I am Phil Murphy. Thank you so much for joining us for these draft specials for the NFL Brekkie Show.